This must be the best time to be a World of Warcraft player.
Oh, for sure.
And I know there's all the doomsayers in the world who keep on saying the game is dead since Burning Crusade. No, but to be fair, there's still things to talk about when it comes to World of Warcraft that can be improved upon.
Always.
I mean, somebody has to say this at some point about Dragonflight, and we'll say it.
It's about time.
With a couple of arguments, I would say, because we get accused a lot because we're biased, because we're content creators for World of Warcraft.
Yeah.
And let me tell you something: if we weren't content creators for World of Warcraft, we would stay playing the shit out of Dragonflight because it's very good. Okay, it's very good. Flame.
It's a very good expansion, and I don't think people give it enough credit considering where we've been through in the last couple of years. I totally get everybody being skeptical about the game. However, if you look back at least the last two expansions, which are arguably the worst, received expansions, BFA and Shadowlands, although we can discuss that in another video, Dragonflight is basically taking all the good stuff that those expansions brought, even if it's like tiny little good stuff, and weeding out all the bad stuff. So right now, Dragonflight, I think personally, it's looking to be one of the best designed expansions.
I'm just gonna say, Dragonflight is the best expansion of World of Warcraft to date.
Why though?
Early, you may say it's early to call. We are like basically talking 2 seasons already, and by the looks of the future, it's not getting any worse.
4 patches, man.
Yeah, hey, a lot can happen. So far, right up until this point, Dragonflight is the best expansion WoW has ever had, okay? We're gonna tell you why. You mentioned BFA and Shadowlands. Okay.
But they brought, so the last two expansions brought a lot of negativity. So we can start off with one of the more basic stuff that people are always concerned about is, like, the class designs and class balance and all of that stuff. Because it has been a point of scrutiny when you look at past expansions, specifically end of BFA and end of Shadowlands, where you had like overpowered specs that are like, oh, whether you like playing Death Warlock and Survival Hunter or not, you were like always looking as like, man, I don't feel like my spec is doing fine, and that kind of sucks. And the fact that, you had issues with your specs left and right, it's like, oh, when are they going to fix this? When are they going to make my class good? Now we have constant tuning and fixes to all of the classes. Very few classes are now the same as they were at the release, let alone in the beta when we actually tested all of them. Everything's being improved. Sure, some of them get, improvements a little bit quicker, some of them later, but maybe one of the best examples that we've had right now is Paladin as a whole, starting with Ret and Prot and going into Holy in 10.1.5. How many reworks and, positive reworks are we gonna have before people actually understand that this is the best time to actually play any kind of spec that you want, because the devs are on top of it?
Yeah, we bank so much on the class philosophy and their design and how they addressed it in Dragonflight, because we always said back in I think in our first couple of videos back in BFA, the class of World of Warcraft which you decide to play is the first gateway through the whole universe of WoW. You cannot give two shits about the story, the context, the villain, the cinematic, or whatever if your first ever interaction with that world is shit.
Through your class. Yeah.
And going back, right, again, BFA, you lost the artifact power, you lost the artifact weapon, and you didn't have any traits and stuff. Your class felt very shallow. Very similar in Shadowlands up until you got access to all the covenants and legendaries and so on and so forth.
Azerite, all of that going away.
So yeah, this is the thing. When your first impression with that new expansion is playing something that feels incomplete, again, you'll not care too much about, oh, this new Chinese system and all. Look at Sylvanas being all interesting and mysterious, and Blue Nipple Boy. No, you won't care about that. You won't get invested into it because your first experience, your out of the box experience is shit. The reason Dragonflight did good by themselves, first of all, the developers, and then they did good for the players, is that, hey, this is your class. You want to get better. You want to have your class get better numbers wise. Well, go play the game. That's it. You get some nice gear. And that's pretty much it. Your class is complete from the get-go. You don't need some extra item that will give you some extra ability or modify an ability to make your class work.
And the best argument probably for this is the revamp of the talent system, which is, you know, it's kind of similar to what we had back in the day where, you know, you put a point and it unlocks multiple paths and you keep going down. It definitely creates a lot of builds and a lot of play styles. Now, pretty much all of the specs in the game have at least 2 builds that you can play. Some of them play largely the same because, I mean, they're the same specs. You know, if you're a frost mage, you're gonna shoot frost bolts. Like, don't be surprised, right? But the way that you interact with the gameplay, the fact that if you really want to go deep into a spec and into a class for dungeons and raids or world content or PvP as well, there are builds for all of the situations. That's the kind of flexibility the new talent system provide, which means it can mean a lot of things. It can mean that you're not going to get bored by the spec. It means that your spec can handle different things that maybe in the past couldn't, or maybe your spec couldn't do AoE whatsoever in Shadowlands or BFA. Now it has tools for everything. Some better, some worse, but you know, they're constantly working on this as well, going further into the development of the patches, looking at everything that they've added so far. And once again, I think Paladin is maybe one of the best examples, starting from a class that has the worst class tree out of all of the classes in the game, getting iterated and maybe right now having one of the best class trees.
Sure, yeah. I mean, Red's initial talent, we all know it wasn't like for the best. It was basically a gimped version of the previous Shadowlands build, more or less. Then you had Prot, who was suffering from a lot of like bugs and, you know, incomplete and inconsistencies throughout the nodes. Holy, obviously we cannot really say for sure right now, but it does look a lot more positive with the rework.
Everybody's just loving the new Holy rework that's coming.
But again, just circling back, even if you're not into like, okay, maybe you are one of the few that really don't care about what class they're playing, they just want to experience the world. Well, I think they did pretty good on that front as well. Because dragons, there's nothing more simpler than that. When people saw dragons in that announcement trailer, everybody lost their fucking minds. It was, it's so simple and so there. Like forget about the different depth
multi-dimensional
the
traders.
super plots hanging trees everywhere and fuck all that, man. It's not relatable. But when you see a couple of dragons flying around, like, holy shit, this whole
dude, this, like, obviously we can have a whole video just on the concept of the high fantasy of having big cities up in the skies with dragons flying around and you hopping on a dragon and flying through the clouds, which is really cool, or through all the stones that you've seen in a lot of movies and all of the stuff, like going through below arches and coming up all the waterfalls. That's I mean, you can do that, man. Like, when was the last time? So, and even with all of that, the open world is just so much better. Maybe you're not a raider, maybe you're not a dungeon pusher or a PvP, or maybe you just like to go into the raid, experience all the factions in the story, or just get the, I don't know, the feasts. We have all sorts of events now in the game where you just have things to do. They're not, and the coolest part is, because we go back into Shadowlands,
they're not mandatory.
They're not mandatory.
Yeah.
You remember the Maw? Remember Torghast? None of that is mandatory. It's just for fun. It's clear if you just, even if you start in Dragonflight now and you level through it, it's clear that the game is made so that you have fun. It's not about you being strong. It's not about you being the best out of everybody or have the coolest stuff. It's just about having fun in a video game.
Like, weirdly enough, a lot of people for the longest time complained that there's no really open world activities in World of Warcraft. I didn't really care too much because I always felt like world quests were like dog shit. They were boring and didn't serve no purpose other than maybe get some extra artifact power or whatever. But let me tell you, like, if you decide one day to just hop on your dragon and fly around, you know, the Dragon Isles or whatever zone you're in, Zalra Cavern or whatever, there's events happening
the world
in
feels
places.
Alive.
It's very much the open world activities just pop up from nowhere, and you cannot help but see what the hell is going on, because the key difference is you see players there. When the Grand Hunt was up, you saw players doing that shit.
Oh my god.
When you had the assault on Dragon Bay Keep, you saw a bunch of stacked nerds over there just waiting for that event to happen. This is the difference. You have events that are not mandatory. They have a decent reward at the end if you complete it, but you also see players there.
Oh my god, I don't think I felt better playing an MMO than when I was doing either mostly Great Hunts, and then you go down, you do the beast thing, whatever, and then everybody hops on the dragons, like 50 people hopping on a dragon
everywhere,
all at once, going up into the sky like a flock of dragons. That's something that's really cool for an MMO perspective. And the thing with the world is that it is alive. all those events, they go on with or without you. So you're just along for the run. It's like, oh, I'm just here. Oh, you guys are doing this, all this up in and do that. The world feels alive, which is something that we've missed for a very long time, and I love it that it brings back, and it's not like the Maw, where like, oh my god, if I miss this, I'm gonna be behind on Stygia, then I'm gonna be behind all my legendaries, like none of that stuff.
You don't feel left behind, and I think this is also thanks to the new gearing system they introduced this time around. I think this system, while not perfect, I'm gonna say it's not perfect. I feel it's the basis for something that can work very, very cool moving forward. And we even have information that a lot of these stones will make it into the currency tab, so you won't have your bag filled with different million types of stones or whatever. But I think one of the key elements here when it comes to like gearing up and not feeling left behind and not feeling you have to do all of these chores is the fact that Dragonflight put a lot of emphasis on your time. You don't ever feel that your time is wasted, even when you fail a key, let's say. Even when you like take, I don't know, 20 attempts to kill some boss on normal. Even then, you still have something you receive that can work. And this is thanks due to the system with the flight zones, because you can always have something to look forward to. Having just a little bit more currency to upgrade your next item. All right, so this is why in conjunction, so the new system, new gearing system in conjunction with how the game is played currently, like no external stuff except the basic ones, Mythic Plus, Arenas, and Raiding, all of these together value your time. Again, even when you don't have enough time to put into, like, succeed into an activity, or, I don't know, you're just like in bad luck, or you don't have...
That's a good point, because the time and the gearing is made probably even more obvious with the Omni tokens that we've had this time, because obviously tier sets is something that people wanted, and tier sets were pretty cool to get with the Catalyst system that they've added back at the end of Shadowlands. Like, oh, okay, even if I don't get lucky to get my tier set, I can still, you know, catch up. We'll still have the Catalyst. We will always have the Catalyst from now on, unless they decide otherwise.
I think it's up in 3 weeks.
The coolest thing is, first of all, the last boss of the expansion drops an Omni token, which can be any tier piece that you want. You will get Omni tokens from doing dungeons and getting like 2k score. You have the same for PvP, so you get these little buckets of... Even if you didn't loot anything in your 20 dungeons for whatever reason, you still have a chance at the end to actually get a tier piece. Well, not a chance, it's guaranteed once you get 2k. To get a tier piece that you don't have. And during this time, if you haven't got any other tier pieces, you'll essentially get the Catalyst that will just give you the tier set at all. So it's not like the previous grind where you're like, oh, I'm just unlucky and get 2,000 bracers in a row and never actually get something that I want. There is, and with the professions as well, the professions is a guaranteed crafting source that you don't rely on RNG whatsoever, and some of the items are actually better than raids and dungeons.
Oh yeah, this is the rework they did to professions is also another reason why Dragonflight is... I don't know if like maybe Burning Crusade had this level of impact in terms of professions, but I may be wrong.
But this one TBC was super grindy.
Yeah, it was giga grindy for sure, but I'm just talking about impact. So here you will craft items, or you will like make orders for people to craft items for you, which will be either BIS or highly competitive with a BIS item that would drop maybe from a mythic raid or a high key or whatever. But just talking about this whole new system they implemented with the gearing and not feeling you have to do all these chores and make the checklist every day in WoW, the main thing you have to do is play the game however you want. And this is a big distance away from how it was in BFA, in Legion, BFA, and Shadowlands, because you can get access to the appropriate level of gear to make you competitive in your like level of gameplay from the content that you do. You don't have to do Mythic Plus if you don't want to. You could just raid, or vice versa, or just do arenas, or raid battlegrounds. Granted, PvP is not in the best state it has ever been, although they introduced the solo shuffle. That's a mess over there as well. Maybe this is one of the biggest negatives of Dragonflight, the PvP scene. We can address that for a little bit. But the main point here is you don't have to, you're not forced to do endless activities that are boring and they feel like you're a rat, like always on the wheel. You play however you want the game, and guess what? You can always have some sort of reward that will feel impactful. If it's not a guaranteed piece of loot, it's a guaranteed piece of currency that you will use to either upgrade an existing piece of loot, or if you like push and push and push, getting that 2k in Mythic Plus, or getting some nice achievements on heroic rating or whatever, you will have access to some guaranteed stuff. It's not ideal. You still cannot target specific stuff, except with the Omni
Well,
token.
there's also one thing that you can actually target, because this is something that a lot of people have had issues with when it comes to grinding, and that's reputations. These have also been revamped right now into what they took. One good thing that Shadowlands did was the renown system, but it wasn't that great. Now it's been actually improved. So basically right now you don't have rep, you have renown. And you have renown levels, and each level awards you with different things. Very, very, very little player power. It's mostly catch-up gear if you're doing for an alt, and you unlock profession recipes as well. And most of all, you unlock cool cosmetics for your dragon, for your armors, for other events. You improve all your open world content if you do want to get that. Because remember, you had super, super grindy reputations in the past. I always think of Mop for this, because I still, I know how much I spent to get my straw head, and I still don't have my Terran Zumag. But now, and even if, let's say, okay, well, I still have to grind renowns, right? Well, yeah, but we've had people in our community that got to max within the first week on almost all of the renowns. And that's the first week, and you don't have to play that way. In the course of a patch, if you play your character, you'll undoubtedly get max renown with all of the stuff if you just do open world content. I think that's a great way to add repetition where it doesn't feel like, oh, I need 10,000 points to get to Exalted. Oh.
Yeah, you just, I mean, it's so passive in a sense that you just pick up a couple of quests like on every week and you start doing your activities as you normally do and you start getting renown. Now, obviously, you can target your renown, that's for sure, if you want to like really get some of the perks, but it's not required. It doesn't really net you like super giga advantage of it. No, again, the biggest advantage you can have is just playing the way you want, and I think they nailed this 100%. You feel a lot more free to do stuff. The game feels much more enjoyable in all departments, regardless of what content you prefer. The grinds, more or less, they're kind of out. There's no more chores. And man, if you want to play alts, as I think a lot of you do like to play alts, I don't think there has ever been an expansion that has addressed this the way Dragonflight has addressed it, especially now with Season 2, with all, again, with the new gearing system and what used to be like the biggest pain, the biggest fear, the biggest, oh my god, I have to do this again. It transformed itself into like, man, I cannot wait to try out this new spec.
Dude, I think like the coolest thing that I realized happened, obviously this is very subjective. However, I am not like the high-end player or anything like that. Before we even got halfway through our raid progression, I was able to do plus 20 keys on 3 alts.
Yeah,
that never happened before.
Says a lot.
And sure, not everybody wants to do 20 keys, but that's just an example of how high you can get your alts to be able to do the content that you like without feeling like, oh my god, I just need 3 weeks of doing this before I actually get to do what I want. That's no longer the case.
Yes. So overall, we have fun. We have less grinds. We have less chores. I mean, almost no chores. There's the alt friendliness is at its highest it's ever been. We have all of the new gearing system that addresses everything, and you can play the game like however you want. Is Dragonflight the best expansion? Whatever. Not to mention the story, which is not amazing.
New class, new spec coming up.
Yeah, okay, yeah,
Jeez,
that too.
We forgot about that augmentation, like the Bard spec thing that everybody wanted
brand
to
new
get.
Gameplay mechanic for this new class introduced in the expansion. Early to tell for sure, but so far this is the best expansion of World of Warcraft.
It's really good.
Was touching a little bit on the story and the setting and all of that. Okay, the story isn't like the greatest. Oh my god!
It doesn't have to be though.
Exactly, it doesn't have to be like Sargeras pulling up his sword and like stabbing Azeroth. It doesn't have to be like that. And I feel like the characters we've been introduced to so far are pretty cool.
They have
interesting.
Personality.
They have a lot more personality.
You don't need like 10,000 years of WoW lore to understand what's going on right now. There are bad dragons, good dragons. We like to help the good dragons, and we like to not help the bad dragons.
This is pretty much it. And let me tell you, the work they've done with like the rendered cinematics so far, really, really good. I think, you know, we can get a little bit immersed into all of that. There's still a lot of stuff to play, and we're curious. I wasn't that curious, to be honest, on what were the plans of Sylvanas or Anduin or the Jailer, but I am curious to see what what's his name, Iridikron is planning to do. I am curious, genuinely curious, what his like ultimate goal is. I like his character. It's even like our allies, like Chromie, like the dragon aspects, they all are much more grounded, and because of that and all of the things we mentioned previous, Dragonflight is the best, period. I mean, I used to love Mist of Pandaria to death. I used to even Cataclysm. I love it. I know in my head I love Cataclysm. I love Warlords of Draenor for its time, without the content drought. Obviously, I love Legion. I think Legion was
my favorite expansion so far. It had everything cool that we ever wanted into a game. Legendaries and Demon Hunters and Sargeras and the Burning Legion, all of that cool stuff. Yet still, Dragonflight seems to top everything on every level whatsoever. So this, if you ever thought of it, if it's enough, because we get these questions like, is it worth coming back? Is it worth coming back?
It's the best time to be a World of Warcraft player. There has never been a better time to play World of Warcraft. And if you look at our track record with videos we've done over the last 5-6 years or so, we've been pretty critical on a lot of the stuff they did, okay? We praise them when they do good shit, and I think that's only fair, but we have been critical for the most part.
We did not like Shadowlands grinding system whatsoever.
We did not like that shit at all, and we always bashed them for it, and I think rightfully so. But let me tell you, this is sincerely, hands down, the best time to be a WoW player. I know Shadowlands did like super hurt the game overall. A lot of people just fed up. That was like the boiling point.
Yeah.
A lot of people never came back after that. It's understandable. Nobody's judging. I just feel bad and it's just such a shame because the game is in such a good state right now.
The people working for the game are actually passionate about WoW, whether you like Shadowlands or not.
Even Ian, man. There's so many years
I bashed life in his face,
dude,
man.
Ian looks so different when he's talking about Dragonflight. Look at interviews with Ian during Shadowlands and look at him now. He's just like, yeah.
It looks like he gave up smoking. He's actually doing a health class. Like Ian is probably a good reflection of the devs working on Dragonflight right now. Everybody's just happier making the game, and you can tell like whether you liked it Shadowlands or not and criticize for it, that's fair enough, but I think the people who make Dragonflight right now are amazing. They're definitely putting their positive views on the game. They're very open to anything that we do so far, and I feel like this is just this feels like a time where I feel like I can get everything I ever wanted from Dragonflight if I just, feedback the game. I think it can happen.
It's good to be positive from time to time, and it's good to recognize where things are being done right, and this is definitely an example where things have been done right. What do you think, though? Do you think this is the best expansion of World of Warcraft, period, in all time? Let us know in the comments. We're really curious to see what your thoughts are, what your experiences are with the game so far, and what are you looking forward to? 10.1.5 and 10.2. We'll see what.
Oh my god, like anything can happen right now. So we do have to see you in Azeroth, and thank you, patrons, for supporting the content and making these videos a thing. And we'd love that we can just grow. We can actually have fun with the game as well. And it feels like a nice thing to do. And if you like the content as well, you can check the Patreon link down in the description. There's a bunch of goodies and tiers there. If you want to support us to see more of this stuff in the future, we would definitely be super grateful.
All right. Thank you for watching. Bye.
I've been loving it then, I still love it now. Still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. Getting better every day, let me show you how. Cause still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. It's getting harder to stay, but at the end of the day, it's a guilty pleasure, so just log in and play. Whether it's classic or retail, I'ma do a /bow. Still, I play WoW.